you remember when you were a kid and you used to watch Saturday morning cartoons and shows, and sometimes you'd come across a show and you were like, oh, that was really cool, when you're like 7 or 8, and then you get older and you remember it fondly and you go, oh yeah, I remember that show, that was awesome. And then you kind of never think much about it. Well, probably a couple of years ago, I used to love, not a couple of years ago, when I was a kid, I used to love a show called Fast Rider. Power Rangers-like show with one guy who transformed into like a grasshopper-looking creature. It was like a Power Rangers outfit, and it was very similar. And I used to love it. And it had a really catchy theme song. Boom. And anyway, used to watch the show as a kid, loved it, and then got older and sort of forgot about it. Anyway, a few years back, I decided, you know what, I might actually look for that show again. I kind of want to watch it. And I come across because for those of you who don't know, Power Rangers was bought by a guy called Saban, and he also bought Masked Rider, the rights to that, and it never took off like Power Rangers, unfortunately, but I think it still had like a pretty good following. So back in the day, I knew that Power Rangers was originally a Japanese show called Super Sentai. So I thought, I wonder what Masked Rider is. Turns out it's a show called Kamen Rider. So I thought, you know what, let's check this out. I'll go on a website that I know, and I'll rewatch it. I'll see what the original was like before it was Americanized. So completely different show, really, really cool. But this is not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about today is a show called Kamen Rider Zero One. So it turns out, little to my knowledge, they still make Kamen Rider shows. So the original Masked Rider, not the original, but Kamen Rider Black RX is what it's called, came out in the late 80s. It was turned into a show in the mid-90s. Turns out Kamen Rider as a franchise has been around since the 70s and is still going to this day. A season just is airing at the moment called Kamen Rider Revice. Something else, I can't remember. Anyway, so the show I want to talk about today is a show called Kamen Rider Zero One, which it follows so all of them have the same premise. It's a guy in a suit, a superpowered suit. He fights monsters, whatever villains. There's always an antagonist, and each season is standalone. It's about 40 to 50 episodes long, and then it finishes with a movie. And they often do crossovers and stuff. I want to talk about Kamen Rider Zero One. So the show is about a character called Aruto Hidden, and he is the grandson of a rich tech billionaire, basically, who designed a bunch of androids that look like humans, they function like humans, but they're more like servants, and they do tasks and all sorts of like shit jobs that no one wants to do anymore. And there's a group of these robots that splintered off, controlled by an evil AI, and they're trying to free the robots and take over humanity, basically. So the grandfather dies, and Aruto has to basically put on the suit. He's got a belt, and he transforms, called Henshin. He transforms into this superhero. Okay, so why should you watch this if you're a grown-ass adult? This has so it starts off, I think the first few episodes are kind of like, don't get me wrong, these shows are targeted at kids. Like, they're definitely child friendly, like that's their bread and butter, right? But there's so much, there's some really cool stuff to like about this show. Like, for instance, the theme song. Tell me that's not awesome. That's a cool theme song. Every episode has that theme song. It's so I challenge you not to get that stuck in your head. But every episode is about 20 to 25 minutes long. There's always action. There's always a story that you get to watch, and there's an overarching story. There's a lot of cool visuals. A lot of over-the-top characterization, which, you know, I do enjoy that. It's fun. It's a throwback to like Power Rangers and stuff. But the character, yes, I'll admit he does start off pretty cringy. He is a failed comedian, let's say. He's trying to be a comedian. He's not funny. The jokes don't land when they're translated into English. It's really bad, but there's a lot of humor to be had from the fact how cringe it is. There's a lot of spectacle. It's very much like a video game, some of the action. Like it's like watching a video game in real life. Real life. It's not real, but you know what I mean. Really cool stuff. And as an adult, when you go into these shows, as a kid, you know you like it because it's you know, it's entertaining. You know, that's what it's for. But as an adult, you can kind of appreciate the stuff now, like for instance, the choreography. Honestly, I feel like the choreography and filming of the action is better than 99% of Hollywood movies. Like the stunt guys, you know, all those actors are just putting their like 100% into it. The high energy, really interesting camera work around them. Like some of the camera work in these scenes is just like, man, that camera guy's getting in there and he's moving that camera around. Like he's getting some, that's like John Wick stuff. Like he's really earning his paycheck. Really cool. You've got a lot of like video game finishes and stuff. But one of the things I really enjoy about it is like things as well, like the costume design. Like there's some fantastic bright costumes. The character's always transforming into a different thing. So every couple episodes he's in a new outfit. The costume department has some fantastic designers there. The enemies, there's so many different enemies every week that look unique, different, just bizarre, oftentimes just bizarre. And also, one of the things that I found quite interesting is the fact that it's very goofy at the start. Like maybe the first 8 episodes are very child-friendly, very bit goofy, you know, a little bit cringy. There's not a lot of high stakes. But then as the show gets on, it definitely gets darker, and you've got a lot of interesting sort of moral questions that you would not necessarily expect in a child's show. Like they're not like real high level stuff, but there's still stuff like, what is the nature of you know, when is something sentient? When is it just a robot? Like at what point does a you know, machine become a sentient being with their own rights and beliefs and stuff? And how do you deal with that if something that was originally a tool, basically, or an appliance almost in your house, when that gains, you know, cognitive function, then what? You know, does that have more rights than a human? Does it have less rights? Like, how do you structure a society around that? Things like that. Sort of, I guess, the nature of good and evil, which, you know, it sounds heady stuff, and it's not really that heady in the show, but like there's just a few things like that, and it's not all just punching and kicking. And you've got the antagonist, Hirobi, and he's this robot who's freed himself from the system. He's conscious, and he starts, over the course of the show, these other robots start gaining consciousness, and he's trying to free them. He's trying to, you know, trying actually to dominate humans, even though he just wants to save people. You know, it's like that scene in Avengers where Ultron goes on the internet and he decides that humans are terrible. It's a bit like that. He's just been misled and he thinks that thing. So there's a lot of complex narrative with him. He's trying to do what he thinks is right, even though it's not really that right. You've also got another antagonist who does not die off, but he kind of becomes a good guy. Spoiler alert. Called, I forgot his name. Guy Amatsu. And he is, he's got a really cool catchphrase. He's really cool. He is the antagonist of he's the rival company that also makes like technology and stuff as well. So him and the main character have a lot of fights, and there's a lot of like a technology one-upmanship in their combat and stuff. And the supporting cast is fantastic too. Like you've got there's some police officers that help Aruto, which there's one guy and he turns into, I can't remember his name, he's like a wolf looking Kamen Rider. And so there's a few on the nose things, like when he transforms, he has to pull open his thing to transform, like, because he doesn't really want to transform, so it's like a physical representation of that. Stuff like that, it sounds kind of dumb, but it's really cool. But yeah, it's really flashy. The combat is very much like a video game. You played video games with like finishing moves. This is like that. Like you know that their creative team has gone, what do kids like? They like video games. They like this. There's definitely a calculated decision on their behalf to sell toys and get attention by video game style combat, which is nothing wrong with that in my books. Like, I think that's fun. Like, it's visually interesting. And yes, I'm a grown man, but I still think it's really good. The acting's really over the top, but it does, like I said, it does mature as the show goes on. The final is actually really satisfying. One of the best fight scenes I've ever seen. Well, especially in this type of show, but in general, it's incredibly satisfying. It has a real, like the ending is so, like the characters wrap up nicely. There's a hopeful ending. Maybe the villain's bad, maybe he's not. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a nice resolution there. And just a massive spectacle, really, really satisfying. And there's a lot of like little twists and stuff as the show goes on. It's not all happy. It does get quite dark at times, but ultimately it's a fantastic show with a really nice payoff. And the 40 or so episodes nip along at quite a pace. Like you'll have these little arcs as the show goes on. So you watch like the first, I think it's in like 3 arcs of stories. So you get a nice conclusion to each arc, and then the overarching arc. So highly recommend it. And you might ask yourself, maybe I didn't answer it, but why should you watch this show? It's definitely the show is definitely a throwback to when you're a kid. It does bring that level of like nostalgia for that sort of, I guess maybe that time in your life when you don't have any, problems, you don't have to go to work, you can watch Saturday cartoons, you go to school, that kind of thing. It is a bit of a throwback to that. There is a nostalgia component, but when you're older, you can still appreciate the fantastic choreography, the action, the story is actually, it's just a really good story. The main character is he's hopeful for humanity. He's not down. He's there to champion these robots and to kind of make society see them in a better light than being just a tool. And just really, really well done. Highly recommend it. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening to my rant. I hope it was interesting. I don't know if it was interesting. I just really wanted to talk about the show. I love the show so much. It's fantastic. Like this video, share it to someone. Maybe even watch the show if you want. Like it's honestly a great show. There is a website you can find it called, I think it's called Kiss Asian. If you search that, you'll find it. It's under drama or tokusatsu. Really recommend this show. I think Kamen Rider Zero One's a great entry point. Although you could Google Kamen Rider, find the coolest looking one, and then watch the show associated with that. I think that's a really good way to do it. But typically, I would recommend Zero One. It's really fantastic. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.